Why Ethiopia is collapsing. A Soviet Union déjà vu? Ethiopia, a country renowned for its ancient history, diverse culture, and resilient spirit, now finds itself at a critical crossroads. For much of the 21st century, Ethiopia was a beacon of hope in Africa, a rapidly developing nation with ambitious economic plans. However, today it teeters on the verge of collapse, plagued by internal strife, economic challenges, and a mounting humanitarian crisis. Strikingly, the challenges Ethiopia faces bear unsettling similarities to the Soviet Union's collapse in the early 1990s. In this analysis, we explore Ethiopia's current predicament and uncover how history's lessons may hold the key to avoiding a catastrophic disintegration. Ethiopia's governance structure, known as ethnic federalism, was designed to unite the nation by granting autonomy to its ethnically defined regions. Introduced in the early 1990s by the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front (EPRDF), after the fall of Mengistu Haile Mariam's dictatorship, this system divided the country into regional states based largely on ethnicity. At its core, ethnic federalism aimed to address Ethiopia's diverse demographic makeup and provide marginalized groups an opportunity for self-governance. In theory, it promised inclusivity and equitable power sharing. However, in practice, it has created deep divisions. This system has entrenched ethnic identities to such an extent that they now supersede national unity. Disputes over autonomy, resources, and political dominance have become tinderboxes of conflict. This governance model mirrors the Soviet Union, which was similarly composed of distinct republics along ethnic and cultural lines. While it held together under a strong central authority, cracks began to form as regions sought greater independence, a trajectory comparable to Ethiopia's current struggles. Ethnic tensions reached a boiling point in 2020 with the emergence of the Tigray conflict. The Tigray region's ruling party, the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF), had dominated Ethiopian politics for decades. However, its relationship with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's federal government soured after Ahmed's reforms attempted to centralize power and weaken the TPLF's influence. The conflict escalated into a brutal civil war, with widespread atrocities reported on all sides. Thousands were killed, millions displaced, and the crisis spiraled into one of the worst humanitarian disasters in recent memory. While a ceasefire was announced in 2022, tensions linger, and the scars of war continue to haunt the nation. The parallels with the Soviet Union's final years are striking. Much like the regions that rebelled against Moscow's grip, Ethiopia's ethnic states, led by Tigray, challenged what they viewed as an increasingly oppressive federal authority. As different factions fought for control, the prospect of fragmentation loomed increasingly large. Ethiopia was once heralded as an economic success story, enjoying rapid growth fueled by foreign investment, infrastructure development, and ambitious governmental plans. Nationwide projects, such as the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD, symbolized this progress and placed Ethiopia on the global stage. However, the conflict, coupled with internal mismanagement, has reversed much of this progress. Inflation has reached double digits, unemployment is rife, and millions are struggling to meet their basic needs. Ethiopia now spends significant resources on maintaining its military and security infrastructure, funds that could have been directed towards social welfare programs and development. This mirrors the Soviet Union in its twilight years. Economic stagnation, exacerbated by massive military expenditure, crippled the Soviet government's ability to care for its people. Both nations faced the grim reality of trying to hold a fractured state together while their economies crumbled from within. Ethiopia's economic challenges are compounded by a humanitarian catastrophe. The civil war has displaced over 4 million people, and nearly 20 million require urgent food assistance. A devastating famine, worsened by climate change and poor harvests, has left many families with no means of survival. Entire communities are struggling under the weight of cyclic poverty, armed conflicts, and environmental pressures. Despite international aid efforts, the crisis continues to deepen. Relief organizations face logistical obstacles and occasional government mistrust. What's more, with global attention often pulled toward other pressing issues, Ethiopia's plight has not received the spotlight it urgently needs. Like Ethiopia, the Soviet Union also faced humanitarian concerns during its decline. Economic shortages escalated into food scarcity and mass suffering, with republics like Ukraine burdened by disproportionate hardship. Both countries underscore the devastating human toll that political and economic instability can leave in its wake. Ethiopia's strategic importance in the Horn of Africa has attracted external involvement throughout its history. The location serves as a linchpin for regional stability, trade routes, and geopolitical influence. However, this attention has not always been benign. Neighboring states, such as Eritrea and Sudan, hold vested interests in Ethiopia's direction, fueling both cooperation and tensions. On the broader stage, international powers have also intervened. For example, the United States and China each have stakes in Ethiopia's development and security, influencing aid, investments, and diplomatic efforts. The rivalry between these powers, along with growing regional pressures, makes Ethiopia's situation a complex global challenge. The Soviet Union, too, was shaped by international interventions. While the Cold War magnified its standoff with the West, internal problems were exacerbated by global dynamics. Ethiopia now finds itself at a similar crossroads, caught between regional rivalries and the watchful eyes of external stakeholders. The collapse scenarios for Ethiopia paint a dire picture. If ethnic tensions, economic instability, and humanitarian issues persist, the country could splinter along its ethnic federalist borders. Such fragmentation would not only devastate Ethiopia but could destabilize the entire Horn of Africa, unleashing waves of refugees, further conflicts, and global economic repercussions. The Soviet Union's disintegration offers a stark warning. While independence empowered some nations, others plunged into prolonged instability and conflict. For Ethiopia, this trajectory is avoidable, but decisive action is essential to halt its current decline. The similarities of Gorbachev's perestroika and Abiy Ahmed's Metamer. 1. Reform-oriented visions. Gorbachev's perestroika aimed to revitalize the stagnating Soviet Union by introducing economic liberalization, political openness, glasnost, and decentralization of power. Abiy Ahmed's Metamer represents a vision to unite Ethiopia's diverse society, modernize the economy, and democratize its authoritarian political system. 2. Focus on unity and inclusivity. Gorbachev sought to maintain the unity of the Soviet Union through reforms that would address the grievances of its various republics. Abiy's Metamer philosophy is about reconciling Ethiopia's ethnic and regional divisions to foster national unity. 3. Economic liberalization. Perestroika involved introducing market-like reforms in the centrally planned Soviet economy, loosening state control over production and distribution. $1 equals 3,000 PYB. Abiy's government has initiated reforms to open up Ethiopia's economy, such as privatizing state-owned enterprises and inviting foreign investment. $1 equals 150 bear. For efforts to end authoritarianism. Gorbachev's policies aim to move away from decades of rigid, top-down governance under the Communist Party. Abiy Ahmed dismantled key elements of Ethiopia's former authoritarian regime, releasing political prisoners, lifting bans on opposition parties, and embracing more democratic governance. 5. Both faced resistance. Gorbachev faced opposition from hardliners within the Communist Party and the military, as well as nationalist movements in Soviet republics. Which leads to the collapse USSR. Abiy's reforms have faced resistance from entrenched political elites, as well as ethnic and regional factions who feel excluded or threatened by the changes. Both Perestroika and Metamer are ambitious reform agendas aimed at modernizing their nations while navigating entrenched political and social challenges. They share a focus on unity, reform, and openness but differ in their historical contexts and the specific challenges they address. Each leader's legacy reflects the complexity of trying to restructure systems deeply rooted in history and ideology. Despite the grim outlook, there are pathways for Ethiopia to recover and rebuild, though they require significant political will and collaboration. Reforms to the ethnic federalism system may be necessary to create a framework that prioritizes national unity while respecting local autonomy. Similarly, constructive dialogue among Ethiopia's ethnic groups could foster reconciliation and reduce tensions. Ethiopia's leadership must also invest in rebuilding trust with its citizens. Transparent governance, coupled with policies that address economic inequality and unemployment, could reinvigorate public confidence in the state. Addressing the humanitarian crisis is equally critical. Ensuring displaced populations have access to resources, housing, and stability will be instrumental in avoiding long-term resentment and unrest. The international community must also play its part. Sustained humanitarian aid, diplomatic support for inclusive peace negotiations, and increased attention to Ethiopia's plight can create an environment conducive to recovery. Nations and organizations have a shared responsibility to act before Ethiopia's trajectory grows irreversible. Ethiopia stands at a historic crossroads, facing challenges that threaten to unravel the very fabric of the state. Its struggles with ethnic divides, economic uncertainty, and external pressures closely parallel the Soviet Union's final years, offering both a cautionary tale and a potential roadmap for change. As curious and informed viewers, we must pay attention to these critical issues. Ethiopia's future is not just a matter of national importance, its fate will influence the region and the world. The lessons of history remind us that internal division and unchecked instability can lead to devastating consequences, yet they also show us that recovery is always possible with collective effort and determination. Let us, as a global community, remain engaged, demand action, and support Ethiopia in its fight to chart a path toward unity, stability, and prosperity for all. Subscribe, share, and like for more informative videos. Thanks for watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more watching. February 2025.